Good to go. All right. Good afternoon / evening, I guess. Yes, 5:30. That's close enough. I can say both. Happy St. Patrick's Day. We're here at 5:30 on March 17, 2025 for a public hearing on RZNE 000-406-2025 Highway 93 rezoning. I'll just read this real quickly and then I will turn it over to Mr. Woods. So Mercy Housing Southeast is seeking to rezone 7 parcels totaling 11 acres near 579 Old Greenville Highway from RM1 and RM2 two-family residential districts to RM4 multifamily residential district. Approval of the proposed rezoning will allow for the development of a 168-unit multifamily affordable housing community for residents earning at or below 60% of the area median income. The Planning Commission has already taken this up for consideration. So let me just remind everybody on public hearings, just a reminder, public hearings understood to be a forum for people interested in the subject matter to present information to the City Council for its consideration as it deliberates an issue. It is not a forum for debate or argument between members of the council and opponents or proponents or each other. Each speaker shall be limited to 5 minutes unless the City Council authorizes one extension of 3 minutes. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Woods to elaborate on the public hearing.
Okay. Good evening, Council. You'll remember that on the 17th, I came before you to schedule this public hearing, a hearing date for proposed rezoning on Highway 93. As proposed, this rezoning includes 7 parcels of land, like Robert said, totaling approximately 11 acres, located on Old Greenville Highway that would be rezoned 6 parcels from RM1 and 1 parcel of RM2. RM1 is two-family residential district. RM2 is also a two-family residential district. We would rezone all of those parcels to RM4, which is multifamily residential district. The developer is using low-income housing tax credits combined with tax-exempt bonds to finance the project, and that funding cycle requires the developer to be complete before May, that zoning change to be complete before May. Because of that, council approved this March 17th hearing date for the public, as well as the April 7th date for the first vote of the rezoning and a following April 21st date for the second reading of the rezoning. The rezoning request did go before the Planning Commission on Monday, March 10th, where 6 members present voted unanimously in favor of the rezoning. A point to remember this evening is that while we can discuss this project or anything about it that you would like to, what will be before you on April 7th is a request to rezone the property only. In attendance tonight, I have Mr. Herb Tyler, who's the Planning Commission Chair. He may like to elaborate on the Commission's thought process, as well as Ms. Ronit Hoffer of Mercy Housing Southeast, who is the applicant.
Good evening, council and residents. One of the reasons that I'm here, I think I have mentioned to most of you, is we had technical difficulties during this meeting and presentation, and we want to make sure that the public is fully informed as to what they are requesting on this site. One of the things that we are challenged by the Enabling Act of South Carolina as a city and municipality is to look at affordable housing. This is an opportunity that does not cost the city dollars. However, there have been many concerns expressed online. So at the Planning Commission, the concerns that we had, is this student housing? The answer is no. It is affordable housing, which is 60% of AMI, and that or below. The area median income is determined by HUD and not the U.S. Census data. So you will hear 2 different data points. If we include the U.S. Census data, it's around 50-something thousand because that includes students who live here. But their number is 60% of that or below. The second part is, can a student rent there? The answer is generally no, okay? And the reason for that is you would have to qualify individually. So if you had a TA who is on their own, a teaching assistant or a graduate assistant, and they can qualify on their own, certainly they would be able to do that. But that's the type of people and families and things that would be there. The next question that we have is, can they sell it and turn it into student housing? Our understanding and questions that we asked the developer, Mercy Southeast, who does this all over the country, by the way, just completed one in Greenville on Butler Road, has worked in Spartanburg and other places, even in Savannah, Georgia, and y'all can look into that. Can they sell it and turn it into student housing? Since they're doing 100% of these units, by South Carolina and in the code, using some of South Carolina dollars, they will write a restrictive covenant and they'll be here for at least 30 years. However, when I read their website, not one project have they ever sold, ever. The other thing was, are they required to bid out the construction of the project? And the answer that we got was depending on the types of funding. However, with this project, they will bid out and have a list of preferred builders that they work with to build that. The concerns on what happens if the credits are not awarded. One of the things with the situation that's going on today, these are the concerns from the Planning Commission that we asked. And the answer that we got back was sometimes they wait and reapply again. However, we do know that the money for 2025 has been allotted and will be awarded. With all of the uncertainty in the government today, with Doge or Doggy or however you pronounce it, we don't know what the future holds. So the concern was, if it's rezoned this and they do not have site control, could it become somebody else doing student housing? The answer that we do know, and the feelings of the Planning Commission, are that if they came and told us for some reason this did not work, we would have the opportunity, Planning Commission, to initiate within 24 hours rezoning back of the property, which is what most of the Planning Commission felt would be the right thing to do. So that's a consensus on this project. It's a blessing. It's a chance we have to do what is the right thing to do. It's a private solution to an issue we are obligated by law to explore. That's consistency. This accomplishes something that we could never do on our own with 168 beds at one time. There's no way. So I wanted to just give that explanation to council and to people listening who may not have been able to see that and to understand that. What I would also tell you is that I have done a thorough research of people in Atlanta and other people that know about Mercy Southeast and have gotten nothing but good reports. So hopefully that's helpful to the public, and it's helpful to answer some of the questions and concerns that people have. And hopefully it's helpful to y'all. And again, sorry for the technical difficulties. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, they did get that video and posted it online,
Yes.
so it is now available for
It
the
is
public.
now.
Yeah.
They couldn't find it the day after the meeting, but it was a couple days later. But
Yeah.
that's why all the information was sent out. Total transparency to the public and to city council.
Thank you.
Anytime. Yes.
I don't know if you wanted me to come up and
Please
just
do.
introduce myself. I'm
Please
Marcy
introduce.
Hoffer. I'm with Mercy Housing Southeast. I'm the senior developer. And I want to thank you for your comments and sharing about what our ideas for the project. And I just wanted to say a few more words about Mercy Housing. That we are a national nonprofit and headquartered in Denver, but several centers in out west in California and Washington, and then in the Great Lakes area, and then we're in the Southeast. But we're, as a mission or based organization, like we are in this for the mission. So we buy and we stay, and we invest in communities, and we prioritize not just the housing, but to provide services as well. So that is something that is very near and dear to our heart, is to provide those additional services to the residents. So that, you know, anywhere from health services or food pantry or financial education classes, all those kinds of things. So that is something that we're a priority. And as was said, that we're not in it to, you know, build and then leave. We hang on, we stay for I mean, there are, in the covenants, there's 30-year restriction period or affordability period, so we're in it for that. But just as a company, as a business model, that's our goal. We're not the other flip. So it's really about the mission. So once we invest in a community, we're there for the long haul. Yeah, so if there were any other questions, I'm happy to answer, but that's just sort of a little bit basic about our company and what we do. Happy to answer questions about the tax credit program. I don't remember if I guaranteed that there wouldn't be any kind of weirdness going on this year in the round, so like, I'm just always nervous you never know what will shift around, so. But other than that, we're ready to go, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
So this would be built under the Federal Affordable Housing Tax Credit Program. So my understanding of how that program works is at 100%, it is locked in and managed for 30 years. And you guys would have on-site people to vet the folks who are able to move into the place?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you'd vet in-house, on-site?
Well, actually, in Georgia, we have our own, Mercy has a management company
Okay.
But in South Carolina, we partner with Vista Capital Management has
Okay.
been who we use. And yeah, so that is like a big part of the job is determining people's eligibility for the unit.
And then this program doesn't work with Section 8 housing, right?
It's not that if somebody, it's not Section 8, it's not public housing. If you're talking about Section 8 vouchers, like if an individual had a voucher, they could come, just as they could go to anywhere.
Yeah.
But that's a separate program. But there may be, we will certainly always be looking for project-based vouchers, so that's another way, that's tied to the building, not to the resident. But that's just another source of subsidy to help stabilize and keep them.
But yeah, I was just asking to kind of qualify the difference, because my understanding of, there's a lot of opinions about what affordable housing is.
Right.
There is one definition countrywide. For the United States, the Federal Affordable Housing Tax Credit Program, if you meet it, you are affordable housing by the federal guidelines, right?
Correct. I think when people get nervous about it, one thing that you can say, you can't have no income. You have to have an income. So this isn't like fully subsidized. Now, the area, like, so these are gonna be targeted at 60% area median income or below. So you can't make more than that, but you have to have at least enough in order to be able to afford 30% of your, all those calculations. So, in my experience talking to folks, especially when they immediately think Section 8, if you explain that this isn't, like, somebody has to have an income, so this isn't like homeless housing. Now, could you get some of those residents through other partnerships that may be a couple here in a unit here or there? That's definitely possible, but it's not 100% that. These are firefighters, teachers, the people who work at the Walmart up the street, like those folks who are doing the jobs and have an income, just not enough to pay.
Yeah, my experience, I've had some staff members in federal affordable housing. And my experience was we had to, even as an employer, we had to provide fairly robust financial information for them to qualify. And then I think it's a yearly review.
Yep, you are annually reviewed, so.
To make sure that they're staying in the income bracket. Because I've had guys I worked with who started making too much and were told they had to move on. The idea is that as they start making more money, they move on out and move into their own housing.
And that's the philosophy with the services too. This is meant to be you know, a transition, not a transition, but to get people prepared to be able to, you know, whatever it is that they need, if it's fixing their credit or if it's all the various challenges people face in terms of finding housing, that this is supposed to, you know, be a step on that path.
The AMI, that's household income,
Yes.
and Herbie said either HUD or census. So what is that amount? What is 60% AMI for our region now? Is it 50K or what would, if you were starting now?
I don't know how to pull out a whole number. I think I sent it to you the other, I think it was around, it said 86,000,
Okay.
but that's for a family of 4.
That's
Yes.
what I
Right,
saw.
so, and so then you have like a whole chart of like, for if it's a 1-person household, if it's a 2-person household, so it's, I think 60% of the AMI, I mean, we're starting to get into the 20s, $30,000, $40,000 a year kind of.
And then
range.
their rent is set at 30% of their income. So your rent is also set by the federal.
Yes, well, there's a tax credit maximum, so they'll say the 60% area median income tax credit max rent for this area, and we're in the Greenville, Spartanburg MSA. So there will be a tax credit maximum number. Now, on top of that, within the QAP, with what the state will then expects you to have a rental advantage on top of that, so that it's not, you're not gonna set your rates at exactly the maximum. And then we're limited each year to how much we can increase it, like the state has to, you know, you have to go through that process. So it can't increase quite as fast. So yeah, so all of those are set, but we will set our rents at what we, you know, maximum achievable rents that we can get. And, you know, I mean, and because you are at a sliver, right, you're trying to find people who, you know, make enough, but not too much, and it's a band, you have to review these numbers.
Here's your information, it's 88,600.
Okay.
It's what it is for a family of 4, and that's directly off the HUD website.
I got 77,700 for a family of 1, 2, 88 for a family of 4.
That's the area median income.
Yeah, the
Right, and then
area
you would take
median
60% of that would be, like, they would have to make less than 60% of that, and then you take that, and then you do 30% is what they would have to be able to afford that rent, so, yeah.
So, but can you charge them more than 30% of their income for rent? I mean, is the
They
rent
won't
also?
qualify. Like, if it's more than 30% of their income, if the rent is that high, then they don't qualify for it. It's
Okay.
too high for what they qualify.
So 60% of 77,000 AMI for a family of 1 is 46,000 times 30% would be 13,009. So
Divided by
1,200
12.
bucks, yeah, 1,200 bucks a month would be the max for a 1-bed.
And I think that the tax credit rents are below that for a 1-bedroom. Probably, I'm guessing it's gonna be somewhere in the, if I remember for this area, and I'm not deal merging, it's like the $700 to $800 range would be. But that changes each year. Each year they, you know, they
Yeah.
publish the rates, and if it goes up, and who knows what we're facing in the next cycle. So.
Other questions come? Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Comments from the public? Just a reminder, when you come up, please state your name and where you live. And sign in. Should have said that. Jeremiah's got it right there. Thank you.
Good evening. I have a question, and I just have no idea what the answer to this is. But when you were trying to, when we were as a city trying to get that tax credit.
Too.
And if I recall correctly, which I might be very off, I, for some reason, thought I read that they asking the teachers and the police and so forth whether they would be interested in that housing. And I thought that that one of the reasons that it didn't pass was that these particular segments didn't want to have that. I mean, that sounds crazy, but does anybody recall that? Or-
I think what you're talking about is when the TIF came out, that the school district did not want to participate, or the county did not want to participate, as
That's
opposed to
what
the
I'm talking
people.
about. Wasn't one of the reasons was because they weren't, their participants or their potential participants weren't interested. And that, I think, should be something that should be looked into, because if you have something like that that's built and then the people who you think are going to want to live there aren't interested. I mean, I think that sounds strange, but I thought it sounded strange when I read it in the paper about that TIF thing.
I think
And-
the feedback that we got from the school district was that currently the people that will qualify for what we were discussing with the TIF don't actually live here, and they were afraid that that was going to mean that there was no demand, when I think the ideal outcome would be that they would move here. And so that was the feedback we got from them, was they did a study of the district, and that was not an area that their teachers were residing in.
And I know, I'll add to that comment, I know that they were elaborating, they were hoping that there would be something like this in the Easley area or the general area near Easley. So I don't know if it was a definite, like, no, we do not want this, but in the general area aspect.
I
Yeah.
thought that the Pickens County were trying to get the teachers and the policemen to support the
I don't
the
know about
TIF.
the county.
That they wanted them to speak out at the schools and everything, that they did want this, is what I understood. That they had gone to the teachers were for the affordable housing and the police and everything. So that's how I remember reading it, but I could be totally wrong as well, so.
So it's just something to look at.
Right,
I think.
right.
Appreciate that.
And also, I saw, it was a picture that it was in the paper of well, the email now, not the paper, that there was a picture of the proposed structure. And it's in a high-rise apartment type situation, is that correct? I mean, not high-rise.
I think the picture that was included was 3 stories.
3 stories? Okay, is that going to affect
So,
people?
yeah, so, I mean, it's a great point that if it continues to move forward, we're talking about the rezoning tonight. And so then we would talk about, it would actually go in front of BAR for architectural review and other types of, before we would come back.
Okay, before
So,
that would be what it would look like.
but we're actually specifically talking about the possibility of rezoning tonight.
Okay, but that was it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy, are you running that clock?
Are you running the clock?
5 minutes. Per
It's
policy.
5 minutes. That's, sorry, we were just making sure the clock, so making sure it's 5 minutes, not 3 minutes. So thank you. Yes, sir.
Bob Healy from Folger Street. Just one thing I want to do is reiterate what the gentleman said about rezoning this property back to where it currently is. Because I could see, I wouldn't even wait 24 hours. You know, I mean, there'll be somebody that was ready to jump right in. The other thing that I'm concerned about is, and I'm not going to pretend that I understand all the amounts and the dollar levels and stuff, but I'm just hoping this doesn't become another place where students are able to move in, and to the detriment of people like the firemen, the policemen, and so I'm not sure how that would be handled, but I would hate to see something that is good that we're trying to do turn into just another student housing because that's the way the numbers work out. So whatever could be done to ensure that we're using this to its best means would be great.
Thank you.
In response to that, to reiterate what I heard us saying, that it's very difficult for students, please help me with this, Herb, that students would have to qualify for this independently. They had to be their own tax filers and have their own, they had to qualify economically. So they couldn't be dependent on their family's taxes and qualify for this housing. Am I getting that correct?
That's correct.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
Okay, so does that help you feel
But
better?
what
It
you
made me
have
feel better.
Are there 168 students that are independent when you have, sorry, I don't remember the amount, 25,000 students or something. So I think, yes, it may not, you do have to work on your own, but I do think that a lot of students are not covered under their parents for many reasons, not covered under their parents.
I think we'd have a group
160,
of
I think you
possible
have a couple
doctoral
thousand.
independent graduate
I
students
think,
possibly.
I think there'll be
but not
maybe a
undergrads.
PhD student, but not undergrad, no.
Well, anyway, that's my concern.
Yeah.
And then they're gonna have a financial audit every year of each person who's there to prove that they fit under the federal guidelines for affordable housing. So anybody who's in there will be by definition allowed under the federal law, which supersedes all the state laws and that sets the bar, and that's enforced for 30 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So in a university town, do you have oftentimes where a lot of your graduate students that actually are on a visa can qualify for this housing? Have we done this in university towns? Because that is a good question.
That is a good
Okay,
question, and
yeah,
that would be
sorry,
something I
she
would-
just asked a question, yeah.
Yeah,
If you want to answer
you were
real
out.
quickly, yeah, and then go.
We're out of order.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and answer if you don't mind, yeah.
I don't know the answer to that question. I can get the question, because that's more of a property management side, like how, I mean, it's very complex, obviously, just pointing that
I
out.
think that would be a really good piece of information for us to have with the community that we're looking
160
at.
house units easily.
So what is that, like, if it is a?
International students, that's what you're saying.
International students.
So a visa holder.
Oh, I see, because then they wouldn't, well, that's a good question. I don't want to answer. I will.
Affordable
We'll look
housing
forward
is
to the
needed for
answer.
that group,
Okay.
absolutely. But I think to the question for the citizen earlier, who would it crowd out?
Yeah.
Affordable housing is needed for all those groups.
Yes, I know, it's for everybody's looking for it, so I mean, it's not a demand issue.
If you can share that with Nathan, he'll share it with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
I
Yes.
apologize for out of order.
Yep.
The question that my mom and I have a question about is, how will the city of Clemson's DEI policies affect federal funding for this project?
Who are you?
Gay Miller.
Okay, thank
I'm
you.
representing my mom, Joy Faree.
I just asked your name, ma'am.
Other comments? To give it a little bit more time, there's a comment that was submitted, so I'm going to read it. It says William Gear. It was submitted on March 17th, this morning. I submit my opposition to the proposed RZNE 000406225 Highway 93 rezoning. I do not agree that the rezoning is justified to place additional congestion on Highway 93 regardless of its attempt toward workforce housing. The high-density housing site is ill-advised, and I question the logic of rezoning the parcel in order to place an estimated 336 residents and perhaps 250 more plus autos on the highway. Additionally, there's been no specific numerical demographic data that can show workforce housing needs The fact that the city is a magnet for various parties is obvious and is definitely attracting affordability, but the division between workforce, student, and all other interested parties and lack of housing has not been documented and for the most part is subjective. While Clemson City cites the need for workforce housing, there doesn't appear to be specific available numerical data showing the workforce housing needs versus other housing demands. The city's reports and initiatives are also highlighted general housing challenges such as affordability and the impact of Clemson University's growth, but they don't provide detailed demographic breakdowns or workforce-specific statistics. I suggest retaining the RM1 or 2 zoning for this parcel and seek development of that area in a manner that is similar to known as the Village at Berkeley, i.e. Fuller Estate Drive. A developer can profit from the style and the city would demonstrate its commitment away from its past trend towards high-density housing. Another alternative, of course, is rezoning for commercial, which also steps away from the high-density alternatives. Address is 621 Old Greenville Highway, Clemson. Any other comments? That's the address of his address, sorry. His address is 406 Skyview Drive, sorry. I'll just read the address. Other comments? Give it one more chance. Any other comments from City Council? Okay, if not, we will close out this public hearing and we'll reconvene. We'll say, I know we can start right after, but just give us a little bit of break. We'll start at 6:10, so that gives us about 8 minutes. So we'll close out this public hearing. Thank you very much.
Yes, today.
All right, good evening again for the ones that were here earlier. So now we're for our regular city council meeting this March 17th, 2025. Happy St. Patrick's Day. We'll start off the meeting with invocation and pledge. You are welcome to join me in prayer. Let us remember the values that unite us as a community: integrity, respect, and responsibility for the common good. May our actions this evening and after tonight be guided by these principles, and may we work together to build a stronger and more vibrant Clemson. In your name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. You may be seated. All right. We got some family members here too. I love that. So we'll start off with proclamations. This is Women's History Month, and these are our honorees. These have been chosen by City Council and the community from recommendations from the community. And I'm going to start off with Lindsay Newton. Her family's here. So, whereas Lindsay Newton has been valued and a respected member of the Clemson community in both personal and professional capacity, and currently serves as a community engagement coordinator with the city of Clemson. Whereas Lindsay formatted a number of relationships in and around the community, working at the Clemson Area Chamber of Commerce and as a single mom of 4 children in the Pickens County School District, and has strengthened and increased these relationships in her 10 years with the city of Clemson. Whereas Lindsay has been an integral part of city-affiliated events and activities, most notably as the driving force behind the development, implementation, and growth of the popular On the Ave Summer Music Series in downtown Clemson, as well as the organization of Clemson Music Fest, Light the Lake, and a number of public art projects and exhibits. Whereas throughout 2024 and into 2025, Lindsay added even more to her already busy schedule, coordinating the 2 for 2 Essentials Drive and matching volunteer groups with homeowners in the need of minor cleanup in the aftermath of the hurricane. She stepped in to help with Parks and Rec events during staffing transitions and helped with the final push for Sincerely Daniel exhibit at the Clemson Area African American Museum. Whereas Lindsay's influence is visible present throughout the city as she designs and develops most of the decorative lighting, signs, and banners around town, including the Christmas tree and the Clemson lights, which looked great this year, and is the creative force behind the holiday decorations at City Hall. Whereas Lindsay also coordinates the city leadership Clemson program and is the City of Clemson's liaison for junior leadership Pickens County and serves on the Daniel High Booster Club, even though her youngest child graduated last year. Now, therefore, I, Robert Halfinger, Mayor of the City of Clemson, do hereby recognize Lindsay Newton for her dedication to creating unique and elevated opportunities for engagement and enjoyment for Clemson community members of all ages and varying backgrounds, and witness whereof I hereunto set my hand and have caused the Great Seal of the City to be affixed the 17th day of March 2025. Congratulations, Lindsay. Yep, come on, man.
Congratulations, Lindsay.
Ladies first.
In the middle.
Keep it. You have a speech? Just asking. Thank you. Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
You embarrassed at all?
Yes.
I'm switching. I like this. We're moving over.
Okay, we got the.
We're moving over.
Yeah, family.
Come on.
Yes. Can you see?
Come on in.
God, I've been so short with you people. Oops.
All right.
Family and mayor. Family and mayor. 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 Family and mayor.
No, family. I mean, your call. You want me to? All right. And then we'll do family.
Yes. Excuse me.
Congratulations again.
Congratulations.
I'm glad part of the family was here. That's awesome. Awesome. All right, we have two more recognitions. This next one, you're just going to have to sit there. I'm sorry. I'll read, and then you just, yes. All right. This is a proclamation recognition of service to Lillian Boatwright. Whereas at just, wow, we're showing your age. At just 31 years old, Lillian has already made a positive impression on Clemson and has earned the respect and trust of the community for honesty and work ethic. Whereas Lillian is now in her third year serving on Clemson City Council and was recently voted Mayor Pro Tem by her colleagues. Whereas prior to serving on council, Lillian served on the Workforce and Non-Student Housing Subcommittee for Clemson Next, as well as the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Pickens County Board of Elections. Whereas Lillian has a passion for community improvement, previously serving on the Pickens County Beautification Committee and currently serving on the Executive Committee of Upstate Preservation Trust, which aims to preserve and protect the history of upstate South Carolina through education, engagement, and stewardship. Whereas Lillian has been honored as an upstate change maker, a Jefferson Award recipient, named one of the best and brightest 35 under 35, and is recognized as one of the upstate's outstanding women in business. Whereas Lillian is a single mother who earned 2 associate degrees and a bachelor's degree while working full-time and caring for a young child who's here in attendance. I added that, sorry. And sets a shining example for her daughter and other young women. Now, therefore, I, Robert Halfacre, Mayor of the City of Clemson, do hereby recognize Lillian Boatwright for her strength and integrity in serving the Clemson community and supporting her constituents, as well as raising and setting a good example for her own daughter. In witness whereof I hereunto set my hand and have caused the great seal of the city to be fixed the 17th day of March 2025. Congratulations. And I didn't lose sight, we also have your fiance and your mother here, which is awesome. Exactly. So.
Sorry, no, that's guys.
And we have one more recognition. Congratulations again. And I'm not sure if any of the Chapman families here. I'll read this. In recognition of service for Maud Davis Chapman, whereas Maud Davis was born in Pickens, South Carolina in 1907 and remained in the Pickens County area throughout her life. Whereas in 1928, Miss Davis married Jolly Chapman, and the couple would later have 2 children, 1 daughter and 1 son. Whereas Mrs. Chapman was a member of Mount Tabor Baptist Church and is remembered fondly by her Sunday school students and fellow church members as an incredible person and a true woman of God. Whereas Ms. Chapman wrote a weekly column in the Clemson Messenger, that was just so you know, before the Journal, many, many years ago.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at you from the Journal.
I still call it the Messenger.
So the Clemson Messenger newspaper in the 1960s that provided updates on what was happening in Clemson, even including updates about the activities of local families, such as who have been sick or have been visiting. Whereas in order to write this column, Ms. Chapman has made weekly and bi-weekly phone calls to area residents, which led to lifelong friendships with their neighbors. Whereas Mrs. Chapman passed away in 1992 at the age of 85, but is still fondly remembered by those who knew her or even read her column. Now therefore, I, Robert Halfaker, Mayor of the City of Clemson, do hereby recognize Maud Davis Chapman for her dedication to keeping the Clemson community informed in a time before social media and Clemson community and fostering a sense of community amongst the residents. In witness whereof, I hereunto set my hand and have the cause the great seal of the city be affixed the 17th day of March 2025. Congratulations, Mrs. Chapman. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, that's a great way to start.
Yes.
Next, well, I always say this. I'm looking at the family. You're more than welcome to stay, but we understand there's lots of responsibility outside of the city council meeting. But again, you're more than welcome to stay, but you're more than welcome to slip out. So we're not going to say anything.
Claire was promised pizza for dinner.
Yeah,
so
there you
she's
go.
on the way out.
We are glad that you were able to come. Includes the Newton family too. Yeah, look, you are sticking around. I like it. I like it. All right. Okay. All right.
Engagement, excellent.
All right. So our next item is public session. I will turn it over to our nominee, and congratulations again, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I'm going to open public session. A reminder that this is time for the public to comment on anything that is not on the agenda. The comments are limited to 3 minutes per person, and we do like to point out that if you do want to comment on something on the agenda, we'll provide time when we reach that item as well. So the floor is the public's. Since I don't see anybody jumping up, I do have one comment that was submitted for the public session via the My Civic app that I'll read now. This was submitted by Miss Jasmine Sampson, and it reads, vape vending machines in downtown Clemson. 2 bars, back streets and Roar off of College Avenue have vending machines selling vapor products. Although the state allows vending machine sales of vapor products in 21 and up venues, I have observed problems with access, use, and supervision. In fact, buyers do not need to show their IDs to purchase these products. The city council should disallow it and remove the machines. When I consider the health of our students, I do not want vape vending machines to become a trend on College Avenue. We should limit the accessibility of any tobacco product, including e-cigarettes, to discourage current and new nicotine use among Clemson students. And that again is from Miss Jasmine Sampson. Are there any other comments from the public? I'll turn it back over to you.
All right. Thank you very much again. Just as a reminder, and I should have said this right at the beginning, we do have ADA devices available right beside Jeremiah. If anybody needs them, please keep that in mind. Next is the possible approval of, we had 3 different meetings, so we're talking about 3 different meetings here. Would somebody like to make a motion in reference to the March 3rd Public Comment Subcommittee meeting first?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, any comments or discussion? All in favor of the approval of the March 3rd, 2025? Thank you very much. Next, would somebody like to make a motion about the regular council meeting on March 3rd, 2025?
So moved. Second.
It was a race and tie, but we got a first and we got then a second. All right, any comments or discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All right, thank you very much. Next and finally is the possible approval of the special call meeting for March 5th, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any comments or discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All right, thank you very much. Next, we'll move into reports and discussion. The first item on the agenda is discuss enacting a city ordinance to regulate the use of golf carts in the city. Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. If you all recall, I came before you not too long ago for a referral from the Police Advisory Board regarding the use of golf carts at night if the state were to pass a bill that was currently in the state legislature. And during that time, I mentioned that not only we held several public meetings, and as a result of those public meetings, that was what a common request that came from the members or citizens that attended those meetings. But those meetings, the real reason was to discuss putting an ordinance together to further regulate golf carts. And so this is the end, or should I say, the product of those meetings. So the copy of the ordinance you have before you is after we had gone through all the meetings, we considered everything and put here what we would like to regulate. Now, as a reminder to everyone in the public, the state does have 2 laws regarding specialty vehicles, one for golf carts and one for low-speed vehicles. For golf carts, the state regulation is that they have to be insured and permitted through the state. They have to remain within 4 miles of your home or where it's legal to drive. You have to operate on roads with a posted speed limit of 35 miles per hour or less. You have to operate during daylight hours only, and you have to be a licensed 16-year-old or older driver with a valid driver's license in order to operate the golf cart. The problem that we experience here in Clemson, and we're not the only ones that are experiencing this, talking to my colleagues around the state, they're experiencing this problem in Columbia and other locations, are not only are these rules not being followed, but the one specific provision that has to be 4 miles from your home is the DMV allows the registrants to list 2 addresses on their permit. So therefore, if you have a summer home and a regular home, you can use your golf cart at both locations. Well, some people have figured out that their summer home is Clemson and use the second address as Clemson to use their golf cart in Clemson. So that causes an issue, and so we have a lot of people that trailer them in. The other thing that we experience is a lot of folks will trailer them in, use them on campus, and then while they're here, take them off campus and into the city, and then we have issues in the city. The other issue about the permit is not like a tag on your car. So as law enforcement, we cannot run the tag or cannot run the permit to find out who owns the cart. So if there's an issue with the cart, it's in a parking space, it's violating something, it's parked where it's not supposed to be, there's no way for us to know who the owner is to deal with that cart. So our only option at that point is just to tow it, because we don't know what that is. So the other issues that we see around town, and we could go through each one of these provisions, but the popularity of golf carts is increasing. People like to use them more so than other vehicles. So we're seeing them being driven on sidewalks. We're seeing them being driven on the Green Crescent Trail. We're seeing them being driven in places that they should not be driven upon. So many of the provisions in here are there to address that. And so the other issue too is parking. There's some provisions here to talk about the parking and what the restrictions would be and to treat them more so like a vehicle. Now, I don't want to confuse the driving at night with this ordinance because it doesn't provide for it, and the state law still does not provide for it. But you did ask last time if the state law changed, how would we do that? Well, we would have to amend this ordinance or add another ordinance that would provide for them to drive at night if you decide to do that. I have a couple of other issues that have come up recently, and it has to do with, and I've gotten direction from the state, but just to show you how complex this is getting, we have individuals trying to get business licenses through the city to be a taxi or shuttle service on a golf cart for game days. So this is not just residential stuff, this is commercial stuff. And I have them going around with other attorneys' opinions saying, well, because it's registered in this state, another state, that it can be operated in this state, which I just got legal direction that that is not the case. But there's a lot of other things that taxis and limos have to have in order to serve as that. Now, part of the issue is there are things that the university does not enforce, and there's things that the university allows for, and that's what's kind of conjuring this issue. So they can operate as such on campus, but a lot of times folks are shuttled off of campus, and then we see them in the city hailing a ride to go back on campus or go somewhere else, which they're then acting as a taxi, it's illegal, so on and so forth. So these things are blossoming with these vehicles. And so that's why we're asking to put an ordinance such as this on the books, so we have a better way of regulating them at this point. And I'll open to any questions or concerns you might have.
I mean, reading through these, they seem to be very reasonable requirements. I can't see, I can't imagine that you would get a ton of pushback about what you're asking.
There are a handful of residents who believe that we don't need to have any more regulation.
Okay, sure.
They believe that because they have to register with the state, that's all that needs to be done. There are a few things in here that are a little more restrictive and a little more defined. So if you read the recreational vehicle thing there, that's just to be a little more defined. And I'm sorry I didn't mention it earlier, but they're considered UTVs. So the side-by-sides, there are states, so I'll use Georgia as an example. Georgia will allow a side-by-side to be registered, but under Georgia law, it has to be only used on a county road and off-road. So they'll trailer them in with a Georgia tag on it, and our laws don't allow for it, so there's not a lot of direction for the officer as to what to enforce. So by just strictly prohibiting them from being used on local roads, gives them plenty of direction to go ahead and stop them and say, you can't use it, park it, or we're gonna tow it. There was a couple of other things in here, things that you would think would be obvious, but how do you use a golf cart in a parking space, especially with the limited spaces that we have and the tolls and such, the parking, so helps our parking enforcement folks have a little more direction.
So I got a couple questions. Under parking regulations, it says golf carts must be parked in a legal parking space in a driveway or other location. Is that public versus private land? Saying a driveway seems like it's in private land.
So
it doesn't define whether it's public parking or private lot parking.
It is correct, however, we would not enforce parking on a private lot. This is more for like a shared access way or something like that.
And I would expect it would be on public land only, but it doesn't differentiate in that statement, so it could be used to enforce in, say, a apartment parking lot, which is private land.
Yeah, I think it can be reworded if needed, but all of our parking regulations does not delineate between public and private. So we don't go on private property to enforce parking laws unless the property owner gives us permission to do so.
Yeah, just where it says driveway or other location, it seems a little vague on which one's which. The other one I got, number 3, it says only 1 golf cart per parking space is permitted. When I ride motorcycles, when 8 of us use 2 parking spots to park 8 motorcycles, usually that's considered courteous to pack the bikes in and take up as little space as possible. So if you had a car and you parked your golf cart behind your car in the same spot, wouldn't that be using less parking?
We're talking about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I think the intention, is for the ticketed spots downtown, right? Like the pay per park?
Mm-hmm.
Because how do you enforce a charge being paid for a spot between 1 or 2? You have to make it 1 to keep it simple, I guess.
So we do that in motorcycles all the time, and we pay for 1 spot and put it on the seat of the bike, and the other 3 bikes park in the same spot.
Yeah.
And that's usually considered courteous, because otherwise we take 8 spots for 8 bikes.
Yeah.
We've never gotten a ticket in
Yeah.
So
dozens of towns that way.
Andy and I had a discussion about this, and I did some testing today with our golf carts downtown. So the issue becomes width and length, and whether the golf cart, more than 1 golf cart can fit in the spot without impeding on the adjacent spaces. So when you park them side by side, they're too wide. If you park them end to end, they might fit, but it also depends on the size of the golf cart, because the university has 3 and 4 row golf carts. So if you put 2 behind each other, then they're sticking out into the roadway. So The other thing too is if I say, okay, two can park there, and, you know, one person doesn't know the other person, and one's blocking the other one in,
Well, then it's double parking, and it's like if I park my bike and a car pulls in behind me, I'll call for a tow, because now they've blocked me in.
we would have to figure out language to delineate that, because
Yeah.
you say it's double parking, but you're saying you're advocating for double parking, you know, so it's
I am
it's
if
only
you're,
if,
if you're
know
traveling
each
together,
other,
yeah,
yeah.
it's if they know each other, but that, it's something that we do a lot with motorcycles, it's very common. I kind of prefer that they can't use motorcycle spots, because mopeds make it hard enough to park a 900-pound bike. But, you know, being efficient and parking two small golf carts in one spot doesn't seem to me like a bad thing, but if they are hanging out, yeah, then,
do you have the pictures?
Yep.
and the bigger carts you talk about, there, I understand you'd never get two of them in there.
So these are our golf carts, they're standard size golf carts, and we parked in the spaces behind the substation. So that one you can see is close to the line, but then you get to the next one and it's over the line.
I get you.
So if they start doing that downtown, side by side, then we're gonna have an issue. People can't get out of their cars now, but the next picture will show, well, that's both of them together. The next picture, this is on Earl Street. Go ahead and click again. And you can get them both in the parallel spot. And that would be permissible because then you can get the other cart out and not have to worry about being blocked in. So how we put that in the ordinance is we would just have to figure out how to word that.
I think it's specific.
But those are two 4-passenger jobs right there.
Yeah, so do you end up having to get so specific that like you're limited to 4-passenger and lower vehicles, you don't allow 6-passenger, 8-passenger carts?
I think there's a level of discretion that has to be used there. I just, the way I read the ordinance is anytime you try and do something like that, which actually saves parking spots,
Yeah, it does.
you're liable to get a ticket. And I don't like to punish people for taking up less spots.
Yeah.
I think I can get creative to just say that the number of carts have to be contained within the allotted space without impeding on any adjacent space and cannot unnecessarily block someone from getting out. And I think, without putting any more thought into it, it might cover that. Because we do have spaces that are big enough for that. But definitely cannot park it in a load zone, definitely cannot park it anywhere, you're gonna have to follow all the same rules as everybody else.
I got two things. First, I'll start with the car lights on the vehicles. So right now, let's just assume the state doesn't pass that deal, okay?
Does or does not?
Does not.
Okay.
So next fall, that's just what football says, but next fall, you're gonna have a nightmare on your hands. One night game.
Writing a bunch of tickets if I have officers to do
Well, I
it.
mean, you won't have enough to do it. I mean, listen, I'm not against or for it, but I think we need to be realistic about it. And even now, I mean, you've got a fairly significant number of golf cart users that live in Clemson, and I know that some of those take them over to baseball games, such as night games, and did basketball and all that kind of stuff. And I'm saying, I understand it, but I guess, you know, I'd like to try to think through this whole situation because it will become nightmarish, and I'm not afraid of them, but I think the golf cart lobby will be fairly significant in that regard. However, let me go one step further. I like what you're doing here, but it seems to me that we ought to be on the same page, or better said, maybe the university needs to be on the same page with us on some of this stuff.
So I'll address the first point. Lights would be a moot issue either way because that's covered under state law. So this ordinance would not affect nighttime driving. Second, what this ordinance does do, and I didn't go into it, is it limits people using golf carts in Clemson who are residents and business owners. Anyone who is not a resident or business owner cannot register their golf cart in Clemson with this ordinance. So anybody from outside the area that comes in and doesn't have a permit would be subjected to a violation of this ordinance. So it's basically giving the residents and the business owners the right, the exclusive right of using a golf cart, and any golf cart that's owned and registered by the university to be used in the city. So if you're, with an employment or whatever, and there's a golf cart over there and it's properly registered with the university and it comes over here, I can still find out through their registration system who it belongs to. So that's not we don't have to fight that issue with those carts.
What you're saying though is if somebody, let's just say lives in Greenville, and registers in Greenville, and has family living here, can they register it here too?
The family would have to register it as a resident. The person in Greenville would not.
It could be double registered.
Well, to be registered with the city, under the city registration system that we would put in place, the resident here would have to register that golf cart. So basically, they're taking ownership of that golf cart when it's operating in the city of Clemson.
That's where the proof of residency.
That's what the proof of residency comes in.
So the proof of residency on our city registration does not then have to match the ownership registration on insurance documents?
Yeah, I mean, so
that two different registrations. So the state registration, they're gonna have to be registered through the state, and the state's gonna require them to have insurance and all that for that.
Okay.
The city registration is solely a city resident or a business owner.
So it's not gonna be the same, like if I get pulled over, ticketed driving a golf cart, they're not gonna check and compare all my registrations like you do when you pull a motor vehicle?
Well, the officer should check for a city registration
Sure.
and to make sure it's properly permitted through the state.
Right.
And that's it.
Okay, well then let's go back to this. Let's just say, because we've got a lot of these, okay? That you've got people that have properties over here for they use, and now we use the term game day, because that's what they are, okay? So they live in Greenville, or they live in Columbia, or wherever they live, and they bring the golf cart here for those weekends. And so that cart is probably initially registered in Greenville, Columbia, wherever it is, but then they use it here because they own the residence here on football weekends or basketball, whatever it is. And how is that gonna apply?
They have to register here, so you can register.
Oh, that's, I mean, if you can register in two places,
You
that's
can,
fine.
you can.
Well, I'm not so certain.
Well,
That's what he's saying.
so under the state law, they can list two different residences on the state permit.
Okay.
This ordinance is going to require them to prove that they are a resident or a business owner in Clemson before they can get a Clemson registration. And if they don't have the Clemson registration, they're subject to being ticketed.
And if they own a house in Clemson, then they're a resident of Clemson.
So you would have your golf
can
cart
get your
registered
permit.
two places, but this would prevent people who bring in golf carts but don't
For the
own,
day.
for the
Yeah,
day,
yeah.
but don't own property in Clemson, they won't,
Well,
yes or
okay.
no? So that, those people would no longer be allowed to just haul
Under-
golf carts
Under
and ride
8B,
around.
it specifically says, only Clemson city residents and businesses physically located within the city of Clemson are eligible for a city permit. Proof of residency is required.
So,
That seems like progress, because that would limit the number of people who could just bring in golf carts and ride around.
and we understand that also means that like R&R and the other golf cart companies that rent golf carts to locals now would not be able to rent to locals.
Well, they could, and that's the next one. Residents who rent a golf cart from a business must obtain a permit from the city before using the cart inside the city and must prominently display the permit during the use. So if they are a resident and they rent from R&R and R&R brings that golf cart over here, the resident has to register that cart with the city to be able to use it within the city. R&R cannot get it licensed and rent it to whoever they want in the city.
Okay.
So we're tying it back to the resident or the business owner to be able to use it.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go one step further because it does affect me, but I'm not the only person. So I'm not, my in-law, my son-in-law and my daughter have a golf cart in Greenville. They bring it over here for football weekends and sometime occasionally other stuff. So what you're telling me now is they're not gonna be able to do that.
If you register it as the resident, they can do
So
it.
in other words, I gotta register it here as mine, although it's not.
Yes.
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 You basically are the permit
Yes.
holder
Okay,
because
that's
you're the
fine.
resident
But I
and they
can't-
brought it over for
But I
you to
can't
use.
prove that I own it.
I'm not asking you to
You
prove
don't
that
have
you
to.
own it. I'm just
It's not-
asking
it's
you to
not
prove
like
that you're a
this.
resident.
I just, let's don't get too onerous with this, all I'm gonna say. All of it.
Yeah, I don't have to know that you
I'm
own
not
the
talking about
cart.
just this, I'm talking about all of it. You can look at me all you want to, but I can tell you
just-
right now, the golf cart people are gonna be coming out in droves on this thing.
That's,
Okay?
Do you
God.
see that?
And I live downtown with it, and I see it all the time, okay?
Do you see a lot of people like a
And-
resident renting it for the season kind of a thing where they?
No, but you looked at me like I
I-
lost my mind.
All right, all right. Keep going,
I
Chief.
have not. I don't, I've heard people hypothesize, well, if I have an Airbnb and a golf cart, you know, can my renters use a golf cart? Yes, if you're the resident and you register it, you can let whomever you want to use the golf cart. It's just saying that that permit belongs to the person who either lives here or has a business here. And that helps limit how many people can use this. And this isn't any different than ordinances out at the beaches
That's exactly what I was
and
gonna say.
and the barrier islands.
Yeah.
I just want you to pass something you can enforce, and I don't think you can enforce the night thing at all.
But it's.
Well, the night thing's a state law.
I got that, but even, you know, okay, well, I can assure you,
We've towed a few
I
already.
get a few, but I mean, I
I
That's
just
gonna be
think
a
it's
bear.
great that there's something here for the taxpayer residents of Clemson.
And look, this is your ordinance as much as my ordinance. Whatever you want changed here, you let me know and we will change it. This is just the first draft that we've come up with.
There's one other concern that I've got, is how do we implement, how do we make the public aware of this? Because we can't just go start writing tickets
Correct.
and do that as a
So-
warning, so there's gotta be a public
We would phase
awareness.
it in. You can, and I have it written here, correct me if I'm wrong, we can establish a date as to when it will start being enforced. And it could be an education campaign up until that point, which gives us the right to stop them, educate them, say it has to be registered. These are the provisions, et cetera, and then move forward from there.
I'd kind of expect that education campaign would have to run almost a year
We've got some flexibility.
To get
we
through.
have a public hearing on this?
through the other side of football season.
Well, we had a public hearing about the night thing, or the JC, who had the police advisory board had a public hearing about golf cart things.
It wasn't a hearing, it was just a public meeting.
It was just a meeting at the police station.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Whatever, I just,
So, okay.
Sorry, what is the requirement if we're going, do we have, this is the first discussion, do we then just do 2 votes, or what is the process?
Normal would be discussion, first reading and second reading,
No
but there's
public
no
hearing.
reason, you can have as many public hearings as you want.
And it seems like there's a couple of things that we want to clean up the language a little bit on
Yeah.
anyhow, so.
And you mentioned earlier the university being on the same page, and I apologize, I never got to that statement or question. I've met with the university. The university is considering changing their policy on the use of golf carts on campus. But the last I heard was they were doing an assessment as to how many of them they actually own and use, and what it would cost to make them in compliance. And that was the last I heard. And I don't
So they-
expect to hear anything else back from them for a while.
They didn't share any type of possible time frame.
Not at all.
Okay.
And because it's tied to money, knowing how the university works, I'm sure that is a long process.
So I know that we brought up some other comments that we received. We actually received a public comment. Normally we'd wait, but I'm gonna go ahead and just so Chief has it. I recommend that item 6 regarding nighttime driving be prohibited, or driving prohibited be deleted. My reason is that your ordinance and state law already requires that golf carts be equipped with proper headlights, taillights, high and low beams, side markers, and turn signals. If golf carts comply with state laws regarding motor vehicles operating at night, they should be allowed to operate at an hour without restriction. Chief Campos mentioned special events as causing additional challenge. If golf carts are restricted for daytime use only, car traffic will likely increase because city residents will not be able to drive golf carts to events ending later than 30 minutes after sunset. Assuming the city will be charged for the permits, even though owners have already purchased the South Carolina DMV permit, if should allow residents to operate properly equipped golf carts at any time, day or night. This is from Norman McGee. He didn't put his address, but it was right here, 249. I knew he lived on Riggs, but 249 Riggs Drive, so. that's mine.
His wife is in attendance.
Oh, she is here.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Sorry.
Crazy.
Didn't realize you were here. Yes, ma'am.
I think we need to be careful.
You're just looking at me.
I would go ahead and work on this a little bit more. I suggest,
Well, I need recommendations if you want me to work on it.
I think we need a public hearing for sure.
Well, why don't we document our concerns and give them to Andy to share with Chief? And then we can revise language based on our feedback. And then, does anybody have an objection to a public hearing? I mean, I'm all for like hearing what the public has to say more. And I think that you're right, that there will be a very large contingent present for this one.
Do you want to do, like a working group or something with that? Have a couple of,
No, I just do a hearing.
just do it
So
here.
we can do it before the next city council meeting, could we not?
That quickly?
Yeah. And then from a public information side, we could just share that this is being discussed and what we talked about tonight.
Let's also make sure we're all
Yeah,
in our neighborhoods.
yeah, asking.
Tell your neighbors.
I promise you they'll know. Not me. Give me one phone call.
What I'm hearing is that y'all are most concerned with one, does item number 6 need to be in there? Can we use a word other than a driveway, maybe curb cut, something like that, so it implies more that this is on public property and not someone's private driveway? And then also, double parking.
The dual parking, yes.
Like, sometimes you can, in an ordinance, even include a chart or a graph.
That's true, yeah.
Oh, but I think Chief,
Verify it.
he was,
Yeah,
you were just winging it right there, but it sounded very good.
Yeah.
And I think it,
Chief
literally,
was getting it.
what, your line was perfect, because it just, you said you can't block the other.
Yeah,
My
and
truck
then you
ain't in
can't
a spot.
extend
Like if
in
you see
the,
my truck in a spot, my
I have.
bumper's a little
It's in
over
the
front.
way.
It should be very clear,
It's,
in my
that's legal.
opinion.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Then public hearing prior to the next meeting.
we have
We don't
5:30?
have another one already, so
5:30 work?
I think 5:30, I think we'll
I'm
need,
looking for some head nods.
yes, I think we'll need the whole hour.
Okay. No, I see no.
That's fine.
Fine, you got, no? Okay. Good? Okay. We don't really have a vote on this per se, but just kind of get a consensus.
I would rather
Yeah,
have
we'll-
little
there's no
contribution.
questions here, is
Yeah.
it not? Okay.
Yeah, so we'll still, so 5:30, thank you, Chief. If there's any other comments, we also have the tonight for comments as well. Any, yes, ma'am? Mhm. Yes.
I'm Marnie McGee, and I live at 249 Riggs Drive, downtown, and I don't own a golf cart. We do see many of our neighbors on the golf carts, and I think, I could be wrong, can answer, but most of the longer ones are probably Clemson University, not. But I agree, there will be, you probably need to do a hearing, because people just getting wind of what this is, and for example, my neighbor gave me a ride to the gymnastic meet the other night, and so there's, with all the student housing going up and just traffic, so, and I guess a public hearing is a good idea, because I think there's more people that once they find this out will be like, you mean we can't drive our golf carts after sunset, football, basketball, baseball, gymnastics, any other sporting events that people use. Does that make sense? I just thought I would say that to consider it a little bit more. I'm sure, there's golf cart communities that somehow work this out. There's a lot of game day houses. There's game day houses on my street on Riggs, and people that come. So for what that's worth, I'm glad you're going to discuss it more.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Marnie.
Other comments? All right. Thank you again, Chief. Next is to discuss amendments to Chapter 2-44C regarding public comments and meetings. Councilmember Boatright.
Yes, so we met as a subcommittee, with Mr. Fulmer and Jones and I, and talked through a lot of feedback that we've gotten from individuals, experiences that we've had in the meeting, and compiled those proposed changes in this. It's obviously, it looks really wordy, but I'll hit on the highlights. So we felt that it would be wise to open up obviously the door is open before meetings begin, and then allow people to sign up. That way, if there's anybody who has prepared a statement or wants to speak on something that they have been looking forward to, that they can sign up ahead of time. And once the meeting begins, that form would be passed over to us, allowing for us to read down it to get those people to speak for their 3 minutes. We would allow 30 minutes for public comment with everybody limited to 3 minutes, which is how it is now, but then we also would authorize an extension of 3 minutes. I believe that is not a change. Then if the public comment period expires before everybody who has signed up is recognized, they will retain their spot and sign up at the next meeting if we do not choose to extend public comment, which of course is at the discretion of council. Additionally, I think it's good to clarify that there might not be, like tonight, there might not be people who sign up enough to fill all 30 minutes, at which point it would become open to the public to approach the dais and make their comments. Would you mind scrolling down just a smidge? No changes to allowing comments at the same time as an agenda item that are relevant to the agenda item. And one thing that I want to point out is something that's practiced in examples that we looked at and other boards that I've been on is speakers are asked to avoid repeating points that have already been addressed and provide new comments. Boards that I've served on before, we found this to be really beneficial because it allowed for the breadth of the discussion to be wider. You get a viewpoint and then somebody can build onto that viewpoint by offering supporting evidence or personal anecdotes in addition and details instead of just hearing the same thing over and over. And then lastly, that we do still accept the My Civic comments, but those would be reserved for individuals who are not present at the meeting and limiting the ability to speak on behalf of others and yielding time. I'm going to pause because that was a lot feedback.
Did you mention the fact that you can't seize your time to somebody else?
Yeah, that was
It's in there.
Yep.
Sorry, I know I said a lot, but I did say it.
Okay. One of the other things that we did was we came up with a series of bullet points as guidance for this that we would like to put on maybe the back of the agendas.
That's a good idea.
Have it printed on the back so that everybody who comes into a council meeting, when they pick up an agenda, they will have a clear explanation of how the process works. If we have robust public comments, it delineates how we'll go through that in order. It doesn't ever restrict it, but it allows us to move through that in order between that meeting and the next meeting and to move the public comments that are pertinent to agenda items to the agenda items instead of simply being in the first 30 minutes and eating that time up. The idea is to provide more clear guidance, really.
I have 2 comments from the public that were emailed to us, but I asked the residents if they would allow me to read them, and they said, yes, please. So the first one is from Jenny Harmon. They're out of town is why they're not here. And she said that she wanted to share that I strongly oppose the idea of limiting public comments at council meetings. When citizens show up to communicate their concerns, listening is an important responsibility of leadership, even if some are sharing similar viewpoints. We have been told in the past that unpopular decisions are made because citizens didn't show up to share their thoughts, so they must not care. The numbers of impassioned citizens showing up to speak recently prove that people definitely do care. And Clemson is in crisis. Attempting to turn folks away is going to make a bad situation worse. At some meetings, huge decisions are being made on our behalf. This may draw lots of people who want to speak, yet it may make for a very long meeting. The length of public comment period is nothing compared to how long the citizens of Clemson may have to live with the ramifications of certain votes for generations. We all need to be heard, and our leadership should listen respectfully. And then the second comment from Mr. Harmon is, I'm writing today to express my displeasure in the proposed amendments to public comments at City Council meetings. It seems like the intent of these amendments is to shorten the meetings, but it is not the job of City Council. Is it not the job of city council to listen to the public no matter how long that might take? If the comments are causing the regular council meetings to run long, perhaps a special meeting for public comments could be arranged, or the My Civic app could be used only if the comments are published and addressed by council. I have made comments on this app before, expecting them to be addressed at a council meeting, and they were not. As these comments are not published, telling the public to communicate with council through the app is only a way to silence those comments at the will of council. In short, it is important that council hears the citizens, and those citizens have the right to be heard by council they elected. If you make these amendments, it will limit those rights. This should not be passed as written. I did reach out to Mr. Harmon. I didn't speak to Mrs. Harmon, and I'm going to follow up with him and provide clarity. By no means is the goal of this, obviously, to silence people. That is the last thing we ever want. I think the feedback here that is really great is publishing public comments that are submitted in writing with responses. We're already doing something kind of like that with Bree, with the report cards that she was doing. I don't want to give you more work to do, but that could be an option. I know that we also discussed perhaps if we were to revise the public comment policy, doing something like that anyway. So I think that's a great piece of feedback. What else? There was something else that they made me think of that I wanted to make sure I pointed out. About hot topic items, when there's a lot of people present at a meeting like we dealt with last year, I don't think any of us would ever agree that we should, when there is something where there are a bulk of people present, end the public session at 30 minutes. We do have the discretion as an entire council, not as, it wouldn't be just me, to extend that as we feel necessary. And I think that that would be super important, just making sure that people understand that we will do that and we'll know when we need to. So I want to open that up to you guys for your feedback.
I think the only thing, and I agree with it, but I kind of think back about last spring, just the fact that, you had redundant statements. And I mean, I agree with what we've written. It's going to be hard to police, I guess is the right word.
I think, and it's not that I don't want 30 people that agree on the issue not coming up and having 30 people speak. They should, but they should be providing color to, and this, not the same, in my opinion, the same bullet point over and over. It would be widening the breadth of the context.
It also frees the public comment session from the agenda items.
True.
Right? So instead of getting all of our agenda item public comment on one agenda item in the main public comment session, we can have a public comment session, and then under the agenda item, we have another public comment session for that agenda item.
Yeah.
It also loosens up our ability to respond. And
Yes.
I think the lady who lives over in the Grange speaking really was something that affected all of us, that we didn't feel we could talk to her at all. And that seemed very inappropriate, and that was part of what triggered this, was to give us more ability to interact with folks during the public comment session. So it actually opens the door better.
I apologize, I didn't bring that up. Yes, it will allow us to respond as well, because there are times where it's not appropriate for us not to respond. And I think the items that last spring, or any hot button items, usually are agenda items. And so then it also allows the public session to be focused on items that are not those, and allow for individuals to come with anything else. And this is not a change to how those agenda items are handled. So we maintain that block of time, the time limits, the extensions as necessary. We wouldn't be quietening those voices either.
And there's a discretionary aspect where we're here to listen. So if we need to listen more, we just extend the time so that we have the time we need to listen to whatever's said.
Absolutely.
So it's not to limit, it's only to organize.
I think this is really great to think about. There's two opportunities for public comment, the regular session as well as agenda items. I think that's really nice. To add on to John's comment, I actually think we need to be careful about doing any kind of encouragement of topics, because public comment by its nature is a free speech forum. So I think if we're asking people not to repeat points, we could probably say that, but do we want to say that? Because public forum, again, is a totally free speech forum. And so people repeat themselves, maybe because maybe speakers are encouraged to avoid repeating, but I kind of feel like maybe we should avoid saying that altogether.
Well, I think when we
To be
did
honest with
before,
you.
last time, you got to a point, I think Robert said it, we got to a point where if you have something, you know, we've heard the same message now for a while, and if you have something additional to add, you know, you're certainly welcome to do so, but as far as just the basic message we've heard, you know, from 8 or 10 or 12 or 15 of you, and so, you know, if you've got something else, fine. But
I think that change of language is a good,
So we did, just for feedback, if y'all don't remember, and John said it, and Windsor, to your point, we did state that, and it did I wouldn't say it still allowed people to share what they wanted to share, but there wasn't as much redundancy, and if there was additional information, absolutely. We were welcoming that. We wanted that. We want any additional information. With that said, it did help to say it verbally, but maybe she could be like, yeah, you gotta be careful about saying it.
we have what I felt worked well there was we were in a lane of the topic, right? We had a lot of people who were passionate about a topic, but by making that suggestion, the lane widened to allow more opinion to be shared because it allowed different viewpoints, and then additional details that we might not have had in our minds because they wanted to make 3 points. Somebody made the first, they were able to expand on their 2 points, kind of a thing is how I looked at it.
And sometimes there was like, I want to reinforce the earlier point, and they'll just say that.
Yes.
And then we hear that. And so there's that.
The other thing to ask you guys about.
But in no way are we trying to shorten the meeting, in no way are we trying to limit what is said. And I do think one thing about asking, I know at times it may be cumbersome, but asking folks to sign up in advance, actually, if you think about it, every time somebody comes up now, it takes a couple extra seconds, more than seconds, takes an additional minute for them to sign up and then come up, whereas even if you got half of them to sign up in advance, you reduce that amount of time that you spend on doing that. So I think it's a good thing. But in no way are we trying to limit what's said or anything of that nature.
So my other comment kind of relates to this, and I know that because I'm sure that if we're exceeding 30 minutes, the entire council is going to say, we recommend going longer. Because of that, because it's so unusual to exceed 30 minutes, why don't we just say it would never exceed an hour? And because if there is a hot button issue, if there is a hot button
we just
issue.
allow it to continue until the people know that they're heard. I don't think we went over an hour at one meeting last year.
Oh, yeah.
So what's wrong with saying that public comment session can't be over an hour rather than 30 minutes? Just because if there were an issue, a lot of people wanted to talk, to not perceive that we're ever limiting. And if this is totally counter to what you wanted to do with this, I apologize, but I don't ever perceive that we're limiting. And so it's never going to go that long unless it's a huge, unusual circumstance. But if you go ahead and say, we're open to an hour.
If you say never to exceed an hour, we can't extend it twice.
No, you can extend. You can always extend. I'm just saying instead of 30 minutes to an hour.
So you're saying the line, instead of saying 30 minutes shall be allotted, an hour shall be allotted. Each speaker limited to 3 minutes, et cetera. And then it won't go to the hour, then we end it. And then if we do get to the hour in public comment, we extend it.
And always extend, yeah.
I think the 30 minutes trends average based on the meetings that I've attended. And I feel that, I mean, when we extended public comment, we're not saying we're extending it for 20 minutes. We're just extending it until the public is heard. And so I think we do have that flexibility there. I just worry that if we say won't exceed an hour, that will feel limiting to people.
I think it sets a different expectation when you say an hour. Really.
And this was typical for Easley, Central, Charleston, I think Columbia. We reviewed all cities' ordinances, and ours is one of the least restrictive, really. Yeah, this is all typical language across all of them.
I remember the consensus was like around 30 minutes for public comments.
I think everybody was 30 minutes.
That's right.
So if it's an hour, 2 hours, whatever time parent you put in there, it's still gonna be extended until everybody's heard.
Correct.
So.
I mean, should we say that in the ordinance, so we anticipate council will extend until all citizens have opportunity to speak?
Well, because,
Then you put yourself
Okay, all right.
maybe in the,
All right. I've said enough.
what do they call that, filibuster?
Yeah.
Where you just don't stop talking?
Well, they do have a limit on time, anyway.
okay, I mean, I think
I'll
the
get
sentence, the presiding officer may decide to extend the public comment period at their discretion. It allows for all of these, it allows for us to say, we'll know when it's, you'll know.
Yeah.
You'll know for sure.
Common sense will prevail.
Thank y'all for the work.
Y'all working on this.
Thank you.
But are there
Comments?
from the public
Yeah.
on this one?
Comments from the public? Okay,
I'll follow up with the Harmon family and let them know.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Next is staff reports. Andy?
Couple of things here. If you're wondering why your March 27th budget retreat calendar went down and then came back up, it's because we changed the format of what we were planning to do. We're gonna focus only on general fund and special revenue funds on that meeting, so you can really go into depth, and we have plenty of time. And then we're gonna come back and do another work session with enterprise funds only. So we don't have that information ready yet, so once we do, we'll get with you on when you wanna have that meeting. You'll have budget books ready to pick up this Friday. We'll have them ready by 4 o'clock. Well, we should have them before then, but that'll give you a week to read them ahead of time. And we'll have continental breakfast and probably lunch that I've been requested to not have chips because they're crunchy. Believe it or not, so we will take care of that. The other thing too is that, and the reason I had to uninvite all the enterprise fund people, which is why I took it down and put it back up. PCMA this Thursday. It's at the Easley.
Andy,
No,
that's been canceled.
yeah,
Was it really?
yes, yeah, so it's gonna be in April. So thank you.
Look at there.
Never mind.
One less thing to do.
Took care of that
Oh,
for
yeah,
you.
Mr. Mayor.
More information to follow in the next meeting on but I think it's the Tuesday, April 22nd, does that sound?
Yeah.
I think it's April 22nd, but we just literally earlier today, so that's why. Yes. So, that's it?
That's it.
All right.
I would like to comment on the beautiful new art on the control towers at all the intersections. I think
Well
that is a
said.
nice little addition to our community.
Umbrellas.
They're so pretty. They're very nice.
So
Daily
Lillian,
art.
jump right out on Mayor
Sorry.
Council, no, you're good. Mayor Council reports, comments, new business. So
I thought
they
it was
get-
time.
It is time, basically, yeah, yes, it is time.
Just was so excited.
That's great, yes.
Two things. I think that the Pickens Meals on Wheels invited us to come, and I got to go this morning. It's an amazing operation, and they do like 400 meals a day to our area, including Clemson. So they were also very complimentary of our mayor's engagement and all things senior center over there. They said you're always there doing things. So it's just a great operation. It's an impressive organization. And also we talked about the joint board, the joint university city liaison committees. If everybody will kind of look at those and think about if you're not on one now, I'd love to everybody to be on one. And I think you guys shared information about what those organizations mean. They really help with town government relations. So.
Other comments? I'll make this real quickly. This is from Trees Upstate Annual Report. The regional tree canopy coverage and beyond. I shared this with Tony. Westminster is almost 60%. Spartanburg County is over 50. We're right at 50. Anderson County was about 45%. Travelers Rest about 45. But it's, where we're at from our tree canopy. I know we can always do better. So just wanted to share that. I'll pass it around. Which way? We'll go that way. There you go. So.
Hey, we're above Travelers Rest. That's pretty impressive.
That
In
probably
my
should be
mind.
shared more.
Go up. I'll make sure. Nope.
be in connection with it.
But the tree giveaway was a great success, which I think we talked about. I don't know if we talked about it last city council, so thank Tony and his team. There are a lot of volunteers, so thank you for doing that. I know it's done many, many times. He shared it at Sustainability Committee, so that's where he shared the update there. Okay.
And then also, a couple of us will be in Columbia for the makeup training at the last week of this month. I think is that next week. So just so the public knows, we'll be down there learning new things.
Good job. All right. No other comments. Would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand.